Some things to talk about because this all hit on Friday and, people enjoy their weekend. And sometimes it takes a little time for all of this to digest. How about Cam Newton? Back with the Patriots 3 days before he would have been eligible to agree to terms with any other team. The Patriots and Cam work out a deal. And this is another one of those where the lie gets all the way around the NFL media world before the truth has a chance to even begin to get out of the cage that it's being kept in. There was one report that Cam Newton's going to make close to $14 million. No, he's not. It's a base package of $3.5 million. Roster bonuses take it to $5 million. He's got to play in every game or be on the roster for every game to get to $5 million. Then he's got a $9 million superstar incentive package to get to $14 million. So another great deal for the Patriots, because if this guy makes $14 million, great investment. It will mean they have won the Super Bowl, Chris. So your first reaction when you saw that Cam is staying put with the Patriots?
I wasn't shocked. I mean, I think both you and I thought that there was still a possibility that could happen. I think that's the first thing. One, I was a little surprised with some of the reaction, especially, up in the New England area. Like, oh, man, we're bringing Cam back. And I know it didn't look like great, but I also think there's like a faction of people that are not really being realistic about what they saw last year, too. That would be my first reaction. It was a 7-9 football team that had, 2-3 heartbreaking losses? I mean, they were this close to being 10-6. So you're not that far off. Even with Cam Newton, the struggles and COVID and him not getting a training camp and doing all those things. I mean, those are real issues. So, again, I expect Cam Newton to be better this year. I'm not shocked by that. So and then here's my other thing, Mike, too. I guess this is probably the other thing that popped into my head. Because we know teams want to formulate themselves, right, this time of the year. I don't think it's any coincidence we saw Drew Brees retire, right, the day before free agency. Teams want to start having a plan. Wait, who's our quarterback? Who are we going to get around him now that we know that guy is our quarterback and fitting that all together? But the other aspect is something I've been saying on my podcast and on radio stuff the last few weeks is I thought, Cam Newton got signed. I went, well, there goes Jimmy G back to New England. That was the last thing I thought of. And because I really thought there might be a chance the Jets still Zach Wilson, they trade Sam Darnold, and then, of course, 49ers call the Patriots, and I think that's dead now.
Well, that's interesting you say that because we had Tom Curran on PFTPM. He covers the Patriots for NBC Sports Boston. He thinks there's still a chance that Garoppolo ends up in New England, that because of the magnitude of the contract given to Cam Newton, again,
right,
absolute minimum base value of $3.5 $5 million if he's on the roster for all 16 games on a per-game basis. That's not much in the grand scheme of things. They have the cap space. They could still bring in Jimmy G. Now, Cam Newton may not be happy about that because you negotiate this incentive package under the assumption you're going to be the starter, but you got to win the job.
Yeah.
And maybe it'll be Jimmy Garoppolo and not Jared Stidham who ends up competing with Cam Newton. So I tend to side with you on this.
Right.
But when Curran says, Jimmy G's still in
you.
play, I'll at least keep my eyes on what may happen. I think that the Patriots weren't going to wait to see what happened with Jimmy G.
Exactly.
Because they risked losing Cam Newton while they wait. But now they got the bird in the hand. They can wait to see if they can get the Garoppolo in the bush.
I agree. Like the last thing you said there, totally right. You're right. Like they couldn't wait. You got at some point. We got to figure out something here. Who's going to be our guy? Just my experience playing from Josh McDaniels in Denver to working up there a little bit and that stuff. I mean, they're a team that believes in kind of like, hey, here's our guy. We're going to formulate around him and do that. I'm also with you in the fact that when Tom Curran speaks, I listen about New England always. So I'm certainly not discounting that. I'm just saying, as a guy who's followed the Patriots for a long, long time, I would be shocked if Jimmy G ended up there. I just don't. I really would. You know, one, now that you have Cam on your football team, they're going to be able to play, if it does get to this conversation, they're going to be able to lowball, okay, for lack of a better phrase, the 49ers, because they're going to be like, well, we got a quarterback. We're not that desperate. So that's going to lower his trade value. And I can't imagine the 49ers loving that. But I think the other thing is, too, kind of going back to the formulating of the teams, I just can't imagine New England and Bill Belichick and Josh McDaniels liking the Cam Newton, Jimmy Garoppolo, both in our locker room, somewhat dividing the team. One guy has a little different offense we run, and this guy has that. I just don't see that happening. I think you're going to see Cam Newton, Jarrett Stidham, and then a good chance New England drafts a quarterback somewhere in the first 3 rounds, something like that. Typical New England, and that's the way they go. That would be me calling my shot here, as an early March.
The other thing, too, about Garoppolo and the 49ers and his situation there with that $25 million compensation package. Now, none of it becomes guaranteed at any point. They have to carry that cap number, though. Last week I was surprised that Trent Brown didn't just dig in with the Raiders, get cut, and sign with the Patriots as a free agent. Then the Patriots don't have to give up any trade value. Brown calls his shot. But the Raiders, my understanding was, were planning to squat on Brown and keep Brown around. So getting it done now, that was part of the reason for the Patriots to do the deal. It allowed them to turn around and trade Marcus Cannon,
right,
et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
But with Garoppolo, I think the Patriots could be a little more hardballish with it because they could say, well, we don't want 25. We're not taking the guy at 25.
Yeah, that's right.
We're not taking. We will not pay him $25 million.
Right.
And he can say, I'm not taking a pay cut. So then the question becomes, how long do the 49ers want to carry him on the roster with a $25 million salary cap and cash number plus another one and change on top? It's a big chunk on a guy. If you trade for Sam Darnold or otherwise sign someone or acquire someone that you want to make your starter, so they can continue to wait. Now that's the key with Cam Newton.
Definitely.
The Patriots can fold their arms and wait to see if Garoppolo gets cut, because I still think that's the end game. I still think he gets cut if and when the 49ers find someone else that they think is dollar for dollar better. Doesn't have to be better, just dollar for dollar better than the $25 million they're due to pay Garoppolo. The other alternative is we suggested this when they started sniffing around Teddy Bridgewater, maybe they try to squeeze Jimmy G to take less than 25. That could be the end result as well.
Maybe that will be. We talked about Trent Williams, the last hour, and maybe them wanting to resign him. Of course we know they want to resign him. I mean, Trent Williams, he was there with the Shanahan family when they were part of the Washington football team. He's a special left tackle. We saw last year. The guy missed a whole year of football. He came back, and he was still the best left tackle in football. He's a Hall of Fame left tackle in Trent Williams. So maybe that's the squeeze they put on him. I at least don't envision, they're going to have to find somebody else that I would think is at least equal to or better than Jimmy G to where they're going to cut him or do that. And that to me right now is I still don't know. I know we heard the Teddy Bridgewater rumors last week in that conversation. I was surprised to hear that. I really was. But I think your point in where, I think Bridgewater's less of a player than Jimmy Garoppolo. But he was, $8 million less against the cap this year as compared to Garoppolo, too? So that could be a big aspect of this. But I just don't imagine the 49ers cutting Jimmy G loose until they have somebody they look at and go, wait, we think he could start for our football team and we can win games. And that's what we'll keep our eye out for here as we go forward. But I think the Jimmy G to New England thing, I just would be shocked if that happened. I really would. Just knowing New England and evaluating them over the years, I would think they go with Cam and go a different route.
Another thing they could do with Garoppolo in San Francisco is just say, hey, Garoppolo, you and your agent, you're authorized to go see what any other team would pay you and report back to us what another team would pay you if you were cut, because you need to realize $25 million ain't getting it done this year. We got to do something else. Now, as to Cam Newton, second year in the system, COVID-19 issues behind him. I really do think that messed him up physically and maybe a little brain fog last year, although he denied that. We still don't know the full extent to which the condition affects people. Reason to think that maybe last year is the floor and it can go up from what we saw in 2020?
I think so. I do. Not only the COVID and taking them out of rhythm there. Listen, you're just getting used to an offense and you're getting used to your own place, and all of a sudden, hey, wait, you're sick and you got to go sit in a room for 2 weeks. And then, oh, wait, you get back into the swing of things. Think about, again, I know the throwing wasn't off the charts. There's things we got to fix. We also saw games early in the year where the throwing was off the charts good. The Seahawks game week 2, the Sunday Night Football game, it was one laser and bomb after another. I mean, I'd like to remind everybody, at that time, everyone was going like, well, that just proved it. It was all Belichick. It was all Belichick at that time. That's what everybody was saying. Okay, well, we know that Cam had issues. He definitely has to fix some mechanical issues of how he throws. There's issues there altogether that led to inconsistency and balls where you just go, you're too good to be missing that. But, I've seen too much good to just abandon ship on Cam Newton. And I think he can get those technical issues worked out. And to your question, Mike, is it fair? Of course I think it's fair. I mean, New England's got more cap space than anybody. I would be shocked if they don't get out there and get some really good free agents here. Maybe not stars, not this first wave, but that next group of guys. And he didn't get to take advantage of what I call the greatest system in football, or it was the greatest system I was ever a part of, certainly. That's the other thing. When he starts to learn all the things that this system has to offer and they can put that on his plate, it's going to make that offense more efficient too. And I think that's where they're excited probably to get him going and get him in the building to where they can get going here and start, wiring their robot.
Different schools of thought on whether it was coincidental or deliberate. But
Right.
The Patriots, with a ton of cap space, are in a position to bargain shop. Don't expect to hear, and look, I'm walking right into the old Tate's Exposed tweet. Don't expect to hear the Patriots agreeing to terms with someone for market value today. They've done it twice in 20 years. Adalius Thomas 07, Stephon Gilmore, 4 or 5 years ago. They're going to wait. There's going to be so many bargains out there. They can make that team better. They can add a bunch of guys, get some pass catchers, tight end. Maybe a Kyle Rudolph ends up in New England once he sees what else is out there. I think the Patriots wait and start adding guys, spending that cap money wisely, and they're going to have a better team around Cam Newton than they had a year ago. I think that's going to be a factor as well, Chris.
No, agreed. I think it's definitely going to be – it's one of the better O-lines that's out there. They just added Trent Brown, like you talked about a few minutes ago. They can dominate people. I mean, we saw games last year where we literally went, the Patriots can't throw the football. They're going to run the football. And they were still pulling guards and doing things and smashing people's face in and running at will on some of the better teams in football. So they're special that way. And if they can get, Cam Newton, more of the offense implemented to take advantage of the schematics that, of course, Belichick and McDaniels can offer, along with some talent. And then we know the defense has got some COVID-19 opt-back-ins and those type of things. Yes, I will not be shocked if we're sitting here next December and we're talking about the Patriots going back to the playoffs. I don't think that's a big, a huge obstacle for where that team sits as we sit here right now midway through March.
They haven't drafted a quarterback higher than the second round probably since Drew Bledsoe in 1993. Could you see them add to that depth chart with a high pick? And that becomes a guy who gets groomed quietly behind Cam for a year or two?
Well, I think if it's the right guy at that pick, I just, where they're picking at 15, gosh, I don't know. I don't envision it there. I don't. Typically, I want to say that they're going to look for somebody in that second, third round for a guy to go that way there. But at 15, of course, we don't expect Trevor Lawrence or Zach Wilson to be there. Is a Mac Jones maybe there? Maybe. Again, I'll sit here and tell you the Kellen Mond kid from Texas, I think Texas A&M is every bit worth that pick. And he could be a guy that would be maybe made for, hey, let's sit here for a year and you can learn a little bit and go from there. But I'm not going to put anything out of the realm of possibilities this year. They're playing with money. They got a ton of it. And they got a lot of assets to play with in the draft, and I think you might see them make some aggressive moves. Maybe this is the year, Mike. Maybe this is something we see this year.
4 first-round quarterback picks in Patriots franchise history. Drew Bledsoe, Tony Eason, Jim Plunkett, and some other guy that I had up here, someone named Concanon. In 1964. So not a lot of first-round picks in franchise history used on the quarterback position. Tom Brady, if you hadn't heard, was pick number 199 21 years ago. And one last point on Cam Newton. He's 2-0 all-time against Tom Brady.
Right.
So, and they play this year. The Buccaneers at the Patriots this year, so he gets a chance to go to 3-0.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.